I'll just ask you the question. I imagine those who are either interested in Tesla or thinking about buying Tesla, thinking about selling Tesla. What do you do now? Is this a bargain? Is it still overpriced?
Andrew, if you're a trader, which I put your timeline like 1-2 months, you probably are not a buyer right here. I'm a believer in where this company is going. I want to start there, but just focus on the fundamentals, because investing in Tesla over the last 7 years has had two phases to it. One is the momentum. That is either all investors focus, or second, fundamentals. And to answer your question, the investors are focused on fundamentals right now, and the fundamentals are deteriorating. To put it in a perspective, is I think that this year is going to be down from last year, both in terms of deliveries and earnings. The street back on January 31st was looking for 308 in earnings for calendar 25. That's drifted down to 285. I think the real number is 220. At 220, it's still 100 times earnings. And so that's the fundamental, and I think that's the vortex that the stock is going to focus on until they report their deliveries. I think that is going to be a disappointing number relative to expectations today, but serve as some sort of a relief to the stock, given it will be a good chance for investors to reset those estimates. So this is a pretty unique time when the indications, this gap between where the sell side is at versus I think what the reality of expectations are is pretty wide at this point.
So Gene, at this point though, it sounds like you're waiting. Would you, if you own Tesla shares and you were a bit of a trader, what would you do?
So if you're a trader, I would not own them for the next month until they report that.
Which means you'd sell them? Is that what you're saying? You'd sell them?
Well, yeah. Well, I would not own them. The trick in selling them, if you're a trader, yeah, I would sell it for. If you want to play it like week to week, if I believe the stock is going down, then you'd want to sell it. If you have like a 1 month time horizon. And again, the stock is in part factoring in what I'm talking about. That's part of this decline, but I don't think it's fully priced in. The vast majority of time, these reductions in numbers aren't priced in the stock until the actual numbers get reset. So to answer your question, yes, I would be if you have a 4-week view here into when they report their March deliveries. But I want to also focus on beyond that. I think that there's all the pain that we're having in 2025 does set up 26 for a gain, and that's why I continue to own the stock personally.
What does that gain look like? Meaning, when you look out, what do you think the stock could be?
So at just the highest level, this is probably the best positioned company when it comes to physical AI. And this is something that Jensen talked about on the NVIDIA call, is this shift from right now generative to agentic AI, but then he kind of previewed what's going to be the main focus of AI 2-3 years down the road. And physical AI, of course, that's autonomous vehicles and what's happening on robotics. And I still believe electrification is a fundamental growth story. And so when I think about the 2026 numbers, you get a new vehicle, some new variant. It's a lower price vehicle. They're saying late this year, which probably means mid next year, but that starts to improve some of the numbers. And then this momentum piece, I talked about the fundamental, that's the focus right now, as investors are fundamental, but I suspect that the momentum piece is going to come back, and that's just in the shiny side of what can happen around FSD and autonomy. So if they can make progress towards that goal with the CyberCab rollout this year, some of the testing of the service, I think that's going to kind of stoke investors' optimism that the numbers can improve quickly. And so as I think about 2026, I think this number can be 40% higher than 25, a pretty dramatic swing back. I do want to point out that there are like Troy Tesla does a great job of kind of angling in towards what the delivery numbers are. I think he's thinking that next year is actually going to be a down year too. So my view that 2026 is going to be a positive inflection, I think that's probably slightly out of consensus, or to that magnitude is probably out of consensus, but I think that's what the setup, what we're looking at right now.
It's interesting. I listened to your analyst this morning on television, and you were talking to him about Tesla.
Gene Munster.
Gene Munster. Mm-hmm. And you were asking him, great shirts he has all the time, I guess, but you were asking him about what he thought about Tesla. And he said, well, for a 4-week horizon? Yeah. A 4-week horizon. So that was his mindset, a 4-week horizon. And then,
Well, I think he did say for a 4-week you could see some volatility, but longer term he was a fan.
yeah, but I mean, he was focusing on 4 weeks.
Right.
And basically, I met Elon in 2010, and it took me 4 years before I invested anything. And between 2014 and 16, invested $400 million, and we made $6-7 billion on that. And then we invested in SpaceX in 2017 on, at $1.1 billion. That's now worth about $4.5 billion. I think that over the next 10 years in SpaceX, we can make 10 times. Elon thinks we're going to make 30 times. In Tesla, I think we're going to make, from where it was $1.1 trillion, I was thinking we would make 4 times over the next 10 years. I think we're going to make more than that now from these prices.
Ron, so there's 2 issues, I think, going on with Tesla right now. I'm curious where you land. There's the fundamental issue, which is just what's happening in the economy, how many people are going to buy cars, at least the products that we know about today, right? When you think robotaxis develop, when you think new cars come out, all of that kind of stuff. That's the actual fundamentals of the business. And then there's the multiple question, which is really a market psychology question to some degree. I mean, they're related, hopefully, but there's sort of, as I look at it, sort of 2 issues. There's multiples are coming down in everything, but then there's the actual fundamentals of the business. So you're thinking a year out, it's a lot better. And my question to you is, what happens in a year from now to the fundamentals of the business? Meaning, are they selling more cars? Do you think that they're going to launch new models that we're going to see? Do you think the robotaxi product actually does launch and it's material to the business during that period? What's the sort of catalyst?
So fundamentals. So I want to get one thing straight, though. First of all, that we're investors in people for the long term. Question everything. Don't take anything for granted. Investing for the long term, exceptional, takes time. We look out years. Own it. We own things. We don't buy and sell things. As far as the fundamentals go, so I want to make sure we talk about other people too, other than Elon.
I'm not talking about Elon. I'm just talking about the business.
The major guy. So his business. I mean, you wouldn't have a business without him. You wouldn't have EVs without him. You wouldn't have autonomous driving without him. You wouldn't have the internet for every inch of the planet without him. You wouldn't have rockets that you can use without him. I'm an unbelievable engineer. And the fundamentals of the business, this is an inflection point right now. The last time I was on, the stock price was 160. And I was telling you that I thought that this was a really interesting time to buy because the the software was working. Waymo, when they have cars, you have to have $150,000, $200,000 car. Our car is $35,000 car, and it's software. It's software and cameras, and so it's going to drive just like a person, and probably better, way better than a person. Each new series of introductions is dramatically better than the last one. So fundamentals, the changes, is that. So historically, what what Tesla did is they built a facility in China. They bought this junky place that was bankrupted by Toyota and General Motors in California, and all the union workers were fired. Hear that, Joe Biden? All the union workers were fired, and then every single one lost their jobs. And then we take over this plant, and they go look at it for the first time after he buys this thing for distressed price. They spent $1 billion on it. It cost us $20 or $30 million to buy it. And then they go to see it, and Elon says, "Yeah, let's go look at this place we bought." And it's a huge facility, 5 million square feet, and they can't get into it. They finally get inside, and they go with one of his friends from college as a director, and they open the door, and they look inside, and it's dark and dismal, and it's drugs and prostitution and it's crazy stuff inside of that place, and they look around, and it's incredibly dark. And Elon's looking around. He says, "Well, what we're going to do is we take off the roof here. We're going to make it all white, and we have the production line running there." And so they learn how to build it. And it was making 400,000 or 500,000 cars a year, 600,000 cars. Then they go out and they build a facility in Shanghai, and it cost them $7 billion to build it for 1 million cars. And that factory was making $15,000 in profit a car, investing $7 billion, making $15 billion a year, and then price cut after price cut after price cut. Chinese are incredible competitors. I don't understand how American car companies will survive, except for Tesla. And so I'm going too long.
But
No.
Ron, let me just ask.
But anyway,
you.
the fundamentals are changing. Instead of making $5,000 or $6,000 or $7,000 a car, you go into robo cars, and every time they have 1 million cars that they make, that they keep, that are $30,000 a piece that last 1 million miles, those cars are going to generate 50,000 revenue miles a year. So before the model was they're making $7,000 in profit a car, $6,000 in profit a car, 1,000,008 cars. Now all of a sudden you're keeping the cars and making them robotaxis. What that means is that if you do 50,000 miles a year for a car, those cars will generate 50,000 revenue miles, will generate $30 or $40 or $50,000 in profit per year, per car. So every time you have 1,000,000 cars, you're adding 30 or 40 or $50 billion to $30 or 40 or $50 billion to profits per year for 1,000,000 cars.
You have been a longtime believer in Tesla, a longtime believer in Elon Musk, and you've been right. The numbers that you've kind of come on here and talked about, we've headed $1 trillion and over. The market cap is now back at $715 billion, but market cap was above $1 trillion. You had said $2 trillion when people thought it was crazy. It doesn't look so crazy anymore. A lot of the things you said have all happened, and it's because you've been a believer in Elon Musk. I would add that there's a third consideration in the stock market right now, though, too, and that's that Elon Musk has gotten so associated with Donald Trump and with Republicans and with Make America Great Again that it has led to blowback in some areas. In Europe, sales are down 45% in some areas. There have been cases of vandalism, even terrorism against the cyber trucks, against Tesla cars, against some of the factories that are out there. That's a pushback. And I think of Warren Buffett, who used to say that just because he is the CEO, that doesn't mean he has to check his political beliefs at the door. That's what he always said, and he was always pretty outspoken on things. But several years ago, many years ago, he changed his mind on that and said he was going to keep his political beliefs a little more to himself because he didn't want the impact of people who disagreed with him to come back on Berkshire. Do you think that this is helpful to the stock with what he's doing right now? Do you think does it concern you that he's spending more time at Doge than he is at Tesla?
So my advice has always been to avoid politics. I don't like talking to you guys about politics. I don't think corporate executives, I don't think that's the best use. But he believes this is really important for our country. So remember, ChatGPT, that was founded by him.
Yeah.
And he put up the money for it in a non-profit organization. That's worth $350 billion. He walked away from that because he wasn't convinced. In fact, he was convinced the opposite, that this was going to be bad for humanity. He was worried about humanity. So he gave up his interest in ChatGPT, although they offered it to him again, but he does not care for the person who's running it, Sam Altman.
Yeah.
Doesn't trust him. So basically, I don't think it's a great thing to alienate half the population. On the other hand, he believes that digitization and autonomy is going to be driving the future, and he thinks we're on the verge of having an era of incredible abundance. So he's setting it up for that. And then in addition to that, what he believes is that in order for the planet Earth to survive, that America has to be militarily strong. And the only way you can be militarily strong is you can't be financially weak. So what he's trying to do is set it up so that you'll be financially strong, and then you can be militarily strong, and that's going to protect the planet, he believes. And I agree with that. So I think there's, I would hope that he would be a little less visible, but he feels that this is the way he's going to get things done, and he's been uncovering unbelievable things, and I think will be successful.
How often should you expect SpaceX to have these issues? And you see the celebration from the Elon haters when it's sick, but they actually chortle and sort of laugh about the two recent incidents. Elon, he's right. Rockets are hard, but this is all. There was a time in Elon's life where he would have, if a launch had failed, he would have been bankrupt. I think he's recounted that story before.
3 different times.
Yeah, so this happens.
Sleeping on the floors.
Are things going along fine with SpaceX?
I ask about that regularly. I ask about succession. I ask about how the management is going and whether he's showing up. And he is showing up. I mean, unbelievable that he's doing all the things he has in Washington. And I was talking with someone who was a financial executive of SpaceX, I guess last week. And she was telling me that when there's an issue with something like Starship, which isn't working yet, but making incredible progress, There might be 3 meetings a week. He's in every one of the meetings. And then when it's Falcon, that's going great. So he's there for a short time. And if it's Starlink or a Star, for the defending of our country, he's there for those meetings too. But he's there all the time. I said, so you're a financial person. What are you doing there? And so she says, well, what we do is we give him a deck, and he goes through the deck, presumably, but maybe he doesn't, because maybe he knows all this stuff already. And we ask questions. So why are you in this meeting? You're a financial person. Well, I'm there because we give him the options. This is what this is going to be. This is one solution. And she says, I'm the one who figures out how much everything's going to cost. He shows up at all these meetings, and everyone tells me the same thing. He is more charged up about his business now than he's ever been. And there are all these new, when you talk about the fundamentals, there are all these new products that are coming out right now. Right now, in the middle of the year, you're going to start seeing new products, new refreshes. When you talk about Europe sales being down 40 or 50%, that's you don't have any cars. They're not making them. They're not making them because they're going from the Model Y, which is the best-selling car on the planet, 1.2 million cars a year, to not making them. And so how are you going to have up sales when the car that's driving your business isn't being made? And so that's what's happening, and you're starting to make them now in the refresh model. And as you see pictures of people saying, man, this is a great, incredible car. And then in addition to how you talk about full self-driving, man, you won't believe what this is like. I mean, you have to, so Joe, you like Porsches or something? Go get one of these cars. I'll get you a test drive. I will have a
Taycan?
I will, tell me you have a Taycan?
No, I do not.
Okay, I will have a car brought to your house.
You want me to get an EV?
I want you to.
What, an X? You want an X, like a Plaid?
You like the X? But get the Plaid, S. And
I do like those. I want a black one if you're offering.
I'm not offering it to you, but I will have you get a test ride. And the way they get the most sales is they get people who have test rides.
But I think that the Trump put exists. I mean, I know they've explicitly said there isn't one, but look at yesterday. Tesla's down 15%, and on Truth Social, Donald Trump talks about Tesla. So I think a put exists. We just don't know the level when the White House intervenes, and then today's the Business Roundtable. We'll find out.
He does, but then he kind of ratchets up the dialogue as it pertains to the trade war this morning on Truth Social, regardless of all of the headlines surrounding tariffs and the trade war and what it means for growth and what it means for the market reaction.
That's right. And for a while, markets ignored those tariff headlines, and now they're taking it very seriously. But I think at the end of the day, if we take every headline at face value, then markets are completely paralyzed. And of course, that again creates opportunity because at some level, all these stocks are really attractive opportunities, especially something that's had a 50% drawdown.
I mean, you can talk about the NASDAQ being an overreaction at a 4% down day, but Tesla was up $500 billion in 2 months at the end of last year. I mean, was that an overreaction to the upside? This is what we're trying to figure out, right?
Yeah.
Where do we start out with in terms of valuation and investor expectations coming into this period when it's become a little bit more noisy?
Yeah, well, there used to be this term a while ago called rage selling, and I think these days with instant liquidity, markets have rage selling. And I think it's not just individual. I think institutions push a button and go flat. So I think that, we're getting whipsawed these days. And I don't know where to titrate that. Like, was Tesla worth double what it was compared to November, and now is it worth half? I'm not sure, but I think it's somewhere in between.
Sure. We've checked Tesla every day within the A block of our program. We'll do it again. It's getting a little bit of a move today higher, but not much. And it's been almost a 50% drawdown. I mean, at one point it was a 50% drawdown from its last high. It, fully retraced its move up to that high level. Dan Ives is out yet again today defending it. Adam Jonas talks about, well, could you go to 200 and then 800? Maybe that's where this thing's going. Bryn, you bought more of this name too.
Yeah, I think that, could you think of a company this size that has become so divisive and a company more, or a CEO, founder, more hated? And so when it goes to sentiment right now, this stock has all of those ingredients. A big run up in Q4. You have auto sales have been declining in the short term. You've got Doge, et cetera. And so I feel that the bear case to Adam Jonas's was 200, his bull case is 800, and I think that's what he was saying. For me, I thought the stock was too expensive at 420, 30, 40. I sold calls. I've clearly closed those out. I think that down here, I wanted to add some more exposure because I think the sentiment is just so terrible. And I know that psychology shifts all the time.
Tesla, to me, is the most emblematic of the problem here. When Tesla, post-inauguration, I want you to think about this. Tesla was trading at 210 times trailing earnings. It had a market cap of 1.5 trillion. Tesla, cut in half, is now 113 times earnings. Who's the buyer? Like, I understand it's not autos, it's robots, blah, blah, blah. Fine. Compare it to the robot stocks. 113 times is still very expensive. So it's not clear to me who steps in here. It's an RSI of 25.
Bryn does.
Hang on. I mean institutions. If you love the stock, you're probably already
Requisite
in it.
capital.
Okay. If you're a value manager, you're not looking at it yet, but it's washed out. It's a 25 RSI. So if it's going to bounce, it should bounce right now. The problem is the chart, the trend is so fundamentally broken that I agree with Joe. You could get a 12% rally in Tesla because he comes out and announces a buyback or something. I don't think it lasts. I think they come in and sell that to people that still have to. So there are a lot of stocks like that and a lot of big market cap stocks. And I think that that's what makes this moment very tricky. There's an old saying on the street, nothing good ever happens just below the 200-day moving average. I think that applies to the NASDAQ 100 right now and most of the names in there.
I think it's interesting that you have defended this name not once but twice in the last handful of days. On March 6th last week, you called it a table pounder. Last night, you said your bullish view was unchanged. There are a lot of questions about the stock. It's been down 7 straight weeks. Why'd you feel compelled to come out and defend it not once but twice?
Yeah, I mean, well, first, I mean, we've been talking to investors, all around the world on Tesla, and is this a moment that basically the bull thesis basically gets thrown out because of some of the brand issues, the distractions? And our view is when things are great, okay, anyone could be there. But when things are tough, moments like this, I think that's where we've been able to guide Tesla investors over the decade, right, in terms of these moments. I don't believe that this is really a black swan event for Tesla in terms of the brand issues, in terms of something that could really deteriorate the medium and long-term outlook. But no doubt, we've talked about it. It's a moment of truth for Musk. No one, including ourselves, expected he'd be this involved in Doge, this involved in Trump administration, and it's really cascaded, and I think this is a pivotal moment for him.
Explain to me how you go from your bullish view unchanged, those are your words, last night, to this morning where you put out a note ahead of our appearance where you call it a moment of truth. What happened from last night to this morning where you didn't have that perspective until this morning? How does this happen?
I think from our perspective, it's more hearing Musk, hearing from investors around the world, and it's basically us saying the medium long-term case for Tesla, I continue to view $2 trillion. I believe when it comes to physical AI, autonomous robotics, they're actually the best positioned company in the world. But with that said, to hear Musk continue to talk, and again on social media as well, it's really us trying to explain, like, look, this is the time, very similar as we saw during Twitter, very similar as we saw even called a year and a half ago. This is the time to lead. It's a time to be CEO because I think patience is wearing thin among investors, and it was really to communicate those thoughts at, I think, a pivotal time for the stock.
The reason why the stock is down seems to be a confluence of events. Obviously, his presence within the administration, as close as he has become, he's become a much more polarizing figure politically. But the facts are the facts. And the facts are that sales are not good. And they haven't been good. Are you taking that into consideration? Sales in China down for the past 5 consecutive months, right? Down 49% in February, the lowest monthly figure since July of 2022. U.S. sales down again last month, down 75% in Europe, 65% in Australia. this has become more of a headline story to an actual fundamental breakdown somewhere.
Yeah, but let's also talk about what's ahead. In other words, the refresh from a Model Y perspective, when you look at a lot of the refreshes that are happening in Europe, in China, in the US, you got the unsupervised FSD in Austin. I continue to believe 90% of the value going forward is going to be autonomous, is going to be robotics when it comes to Optimus. And I believe from a demand perspective, especially when it comes to FSD, 15% of Tesla owners have FSD. That's what we estimate. As that goes to 40, 50%, I mean, numbers basically triple in terms of from an EPS perspective as that plays out. And look, I get it. This is a time. Have we been dead or wrong this year in Tesla? Of course, it's been a disaster call. But for 25 years, our best calls are ultimately in times like this, that I believe as you navigate the noise, this will be not just a 1 trillion, but 2 trillion. But it comes down to Musk needs to balance Doge, Tesla CEO. That's something where I think the clock struck midnight.
What's confusing to me is why you feel so compelled to come out and defend the name twice in the midst of a historic drawdown period for the stock without getting some more clarity in your own mind about what the actual sales numbers are going to be. Sure. Whether this is some existential issue, I don't know whether it is or not. You don't, nor does anybody else. Of course, there are a lot of people, investors, car buyers, who continue to believe in not only Musk, but the name itself, and will continue to be supporters. But until you have more facts, why compelled to come out twice in the midst of all of this selling and defend it?
I think 3 reasons. One, I mean, we did our survey, 1,000, Tesla customers. How many would actually pause in terms of future buying was less than 5%. So I think that's important just in light of what we're seeing to actually start to quantify.
Is that the best metric to look at? Asking those who already are believers and have the product? Isn't the issue those who don't and may not buy the vehicles?
Sure, that's one, but I actually think that one of the bigger worries is for Tesla customers, do they actually pause purchase? Do they go away from that? What does this mean in terms of the core base? So I think one's that. Two, Scott, it's trying to navigate investors through what looks like such a dark period, and it is. Our number's going to come down in terms of 1Q, I get it. But it's showing the medium and long-term story. Me and you have sat here many times over the years in dire times to sort of see the forest through the trees. The third thing would be also, it's me communicating not just the Tesla, but I think investors being like, it's time for Musk to step it up. In other words, the Doge, you have to balance it. Otherwise, it continues down this path, then brand deterioration becomes much bigger.
The bottom line is you think the longer-term story, the long story is still intact.
Medium and long-term story intact. But Musk, it's time. Now he needs to step it up as CEO. We've seen other periods. That's why it's a moment of truth, another moment of truth for Musk. And that was also the reason with the note today, too.
I appreciate you coming on. Thank you very much.
Please leave a like on this video so more people will see it. And while you're down there, please consider subscribing. It's free, and you can always change your mind. Thanks for watching, and hopefully I'll see you in the next video.